Tonight on the official Bigfooty podcast, we examine the Bulldogs' recent fortunes, we talk equalisation, and Messenger impersonates Alistair Clarkson. All this and more, coming right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third Bigfooty podcast. I'm the Wookie, and I'll be your host this evening. With me, as is always the case, I've got the Old Duck Navies.
Hello, hello.
And Messenger.
Hello.
And joining us for the first time, I've got Ant.
How's it going, guys?
And Mike 2009 also joins us tonight for the first time.
Good evening, folks.
And if you're wondering why these two gentlemen have joined us for the first time, we'll be discussing the Bulldogs in some detail shortly. And both of these gentlemen are Bulldogs, so the hegemony over the whole Carlton Mafia thing is now gone tonight. We are now outnumbered by non-Carlton people.
That's scary.
Good idea.
Which will please Messenger, if nobody else.
As long as they're allowed to talk.
All right, so our first into the first part of the night, and your highlights from the weekend, guys. We'll start with the Old Dark Navies, and we'll work our way across.
Oh, I really enjoyed Brisbane Lions beating Essendon. I guess most people would have been riding that horse, given the things going on at Essendon at the moment and their good early start. But it was great to see, and it was good to see Staker coming back and kicking a ripper of a goal to seal it.
Yep. And Messenger, your highlight?
Oh, I had two, actually. My first one was Peter Schwab's interview on Open Mic last night. It was Monday night, sorry. It's fantastic and great for Hawthorn people, I guess, but he's had a terrible time of it in the 90s and also getting sacked when the Hawthorn were terrible. If you may indulge me, my second one, Matt Thompson. I enjoyed that thoroughly. Okay.
That's he's just tread all over it, hasn't he, Walker?
I enjoyed it.
I was going there this week, and you just tread all over my punchline. I tell you what.
All righty. Ant, your highlight from the weekend, mate.
My highlight, Selwood free kick. That was awesome. Just to see the Kangaroo supporters go into meltdown. I loved it.
And Mike, 2009, what's yours, mate?
Look, there's a few things. I think one of the highlights was just Collingwood reminding us that they're not out of the competition yet, and they still have a few tricks up their sleeve, and they shouldn't be taken lightly. And also, Gold Coast Suns now not taking away that they kicked that butt, but they've come a long way, and they are getting a lot better than what we first thought they had.
Excellent. I think my highlight for the weekend, Dunstall on after the bounce. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but he was very obviously put up to rave on a bit in what is usually Danny Frawley's Coach Killer segment, and was very rabid. It was very hilarious. But since none of you saw that, football-wise, obviously Essendon losing is always good, especially at this time of the year.
Good for football.
Because I have to moderate that stupid Asada forum a lot, and anyway.
Well, let's
not get into
just
that.
say there was a particular piece of correspondence.
Oh. Anyway, moving right along, and into the, I guess the first major thing we want to talk about tonight is the Western Bulldogs having come off a loss to Gold Coast. It seems to be the done thing these days that if you lose to Gold Coast, you become a major talking point the week after. It's always people's doomsday scenarios. What if you lose to the Gold Coast? Things like that. So, and this is going to go on all year, really. The better Gold Coast play, the more it's going to happen. But for this week, it's the Western Bulldogs. So what we wanted to do was take a look at how the Western Bulldogs got to where they are. And for that, we've got two Western Bulldogs moderators on to have a bit of a chat. And these are, of course, Ant and Mike 2009. But Messenger, I'll let you tee this one off, mate, since this was your request.
Well, one of the things when I went back and looked at the numbers, and we picked up on this, by the way, we talked about the Western Bulldogs well before the rest of the media caught on to it, so they're obviously listening to the Bigfooty podcast. So any other journalists who'd like to get a hint from us, please give us a call, including you, Matt Thompson. Cockhead. But one of the things that they're talking about is, now obviously the headline is one win in 19 games, but I think there's a little glimmer of hope in that, when one of the hallmarks that I always noticed with the Bulldogs in 2012 was the way they dropped away in the second half, and particularly in the final quarters. And when you actually have a look at the stats for the final quarters in 2012, they were actually outscored 2-1 in final quarters in 2012. They dropped away very badly, particularly after half-time, and we're not really seeing that, I don't think, in 2013. They're getting behind, but they're not really just caving in like they were last year. Does that sound reasonable, Mike?
Look, I think there's a number of underlying issues here, and there's been a number of things that have impacted their performance this season. I'll start with just going back to the transition between Eden and McCartney, and that's going to give people a little bit of an insight as to where things have changed and why things have changed. Ede's game plan was a very open running style game, as most of you were aware, and generally relied on a lot of kicking, whether or not it was chipping or long kicks. McCartney has completely changed that about 180 degrees and focusing on more of a contested possession, quick use of the handball game, similar to what we've seen Geelong over that period of 2006-2007 developed. What I think this has had as a bit of a negative impact on the Western Bulldogs players' tanks at this stage. We're seeing them, or we have seen them in a number of games so far this year, keep up there for 2 or 3 quarters and then drop away. This is a new brand of football that they're used to playing, and certainly you can see the older players, such as your Kearney Griffin, who have actually been doing quite well, but Boyd, Cross, Gia, etc., who have certainly been struggling to adapt to the new style, which McCartney's mandating that his players adhere to. Now, what that's going to do is it's effectively like trying to teach an old dog new tricks and trying to instill a different frame of mind on players of actually putting more hard-bodied efforts into actually getting the ball. The pro with that is that the disposal of the ball has been a lot poorer and relied, or basically seen a number of bad handballs, overuse of handball that was pointed out. I think it was actually on the couch, or might have been on 360, which is one of the more telling factors of the game plan this year. We've seen far, far more use of the actual handball rather than the kicking. And what that has been doing is putting a lot of pressure and, unfortunately, a lot of turnovers. And we saw a number of goals over the weekend against the Gold Coast Suns, resulting in turnovers. I think it's going to take some time to fine-tune that. I really don't know how long it's going to take, but there are some issues that come back through some Scott Clayton decisions on drafting as well. We have some definite gaps there between the older players and the younger players. We lost Ward, who would have been an excellent runner to assist with Griffin in the current lineup. And I have no doubts that he probably would have been vice-captain by now, or at least in that captaincy group there. And Harbrow, you look at his game against the Western Bulldogs on Saturday, and he's a very good player. I take nothing away from the Gold Coast Suns. I think they deserve a lot more credit than they have been getting. But back to the Western Bulldogs side of things, I don't know if it's... I think it's going to be some time before we really start to see the fruits of the different game plan. And I think what McCartney's trying to do is instill an honest, accountable game. But the problem is that the delivery and disposals hasn't been reflecting that first effort into the ball. And anything to add to that?
Yeah, you pretty much knocked it on the head, mate. I mean, a couple of injuries hasn't helped us early in the year. We've had Higgins go down. Gia's only really had a game or two this year. I mean, good game to talk about, and the only one I've seen this year, so I can talk about it, is the Geelong game. We had 16 players in the team under 50 games played. So against a hardened team like Geelong, to stay with them and go down by, what was it, 20 points in the end or something like that, it shows that there is some talent there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, there is talent there. You can't sugarcoat what's been going on in the last 19, 20 matches.
No.
I think the next few weeks are going to be very, very telling with the Western Bulldogs as far as games against St Kilda, Richmond Port. I don't know how the game against St Kilda is going to go this weekend. St Kilda have always been one of our nemesis over the last few years and matched up very, very well. And I expect St Kilda to come out firing, knowing that they've been or had the wood on us for a little while now. What we also lack or seem to be experiencing at this stage is a whether you call it a lack of maturity, but a lack of development. A number of key players. We've had issues with Grant being able to step up there and take a role on the forward line, which is causing some problems. And young Liam Jones is trying every week, but he's still having issues with, I think, learning to read the ball and learning to read the play. Not taking too many chances at the overhead screamers and not playing enough of the percentage footy type of things. I know this
Jones
is probably
struggling really with the Jones is struggling a bit by being the key forward there. He doesn't really have a chop out right now.
I think that's right. I think McCartney has got the right idea about the way to go about things. It's now getting the right group of people in the Western Bulldogs team to actually bring that through, and whether or not it's going to happen with the current list or going to need some more fine-tuning. I think that's what we're going to need to take over time. The positives out of the current group, there are a number of great players there who are some real gems and have the mouldings to be really good players. I was impressed by Jake Stringer, and his ability. He looks like he's a seasoned player already after a few games, and looks like he knows he has a level of confidence. Hopefully, we can see that develop over time, and he can develop into a real either a attacking midfielder or forward player. Same as McRae. McRae's game on Saturday, was actually outstanding in terms, and it looks like a number of the younger players generally are starting to lift up. What that's doing is it's putting pressure on the older players in that core group to really have to start stepping up and looking at their own games. And certainly, we've got a number of boys there who have been consistent throughout the year and their careers for being great ball winners, but poor disposals and ball efficiency. And we look at the typical culprits with Boyd and Cross, who put everything week in, week out, but unfortunately their foot delivery skills have been far from polished, and their ability to hurt the opposition has been, or their inability rather to hurt the opposition is and probably number one reason why Boyd seldomly gets tagged these days. So take that, I guess, as you will, but there's also probably Dalehouse is having a bit more of a quiet year than he has the first 2 years. So whether or not he's learning to adjust or he needs to shake off that tag is another thing. Ex-players or ex-Collingwood player Tom Young seems to be fitting in, and sort of Nick Lower. I like Nick. He plays a good honest game, and he's prepared to wear the flag and fly the colours when there's a bit of biffo on the ground. Good old Will Minson, who's been having a good season so far, flying the flag in the ruck there and doing an outstanding job, I think. There's been a number of games where he's had to play the ruck game himself against 2 or 3 oppositions, and I think he's really stepped up a notch this year.
Mike,
and and Ruffy. I think Ruffy's coming along in leaps and bounds on the back line.
Sorry, Mike. I'm looking through last year's drafting. You didn't really draft any key position players, and I wonder whether that's the area of your list where that probably needs addressing coming to the end of the year. Roughhead's obviously taken a role in the back line rather than rucking, and Liam Jones is your big man in the forward line, but I couldn't help but notice that Jared Grant hasn't played at all this year, and I presumed he was injured. Is he at Williamstown?
He was playing Williamstown.
He's actually been...
Yeah, he's dropped right off the...
Yeah, he's actually been playing the Willie Twos, so I don't know what's gone on with his form there.
Been playing with reserves.
Yeah.
The young guy that looks good as a promising forward is Fletcher Roberts. I mean, he played a really good game on the weekend for Williamstown. Only kicked the 1 goal. We had 20 disposals, quite a few marks, and actually pinch hit in the ruck for them as well. He looks like he could put on a bit of weight, and he could really slot in nicely into our team. I'd be expecting him to be getting games somewhere this year.
Yeah, and one other guy I was interested in is from from way back from the 2004 draft was Tom Williams. He's played 3 games since the start of 2012.
Yeah, poor old Tom. He's had a number of issues with his shoulder and ankle. He's actually due to be coming back, I think, over the next week or two. So he's been sorely missed across the half-back line there. But Tom, he's done both shoulders and suffered an ankle injury. So he's had a lot of interruptions to his last few seasons.
Is he almost a guy you've given up on, or do you still think he's got some decent football in him?
I think he can play a role. He's probably not going to be the player we thought he was going to be. It's just injuries have really robbed him since. He's like a Gumbleton. He's like our Gumbleton, basically, if you want to look at him that way. He's from the get-go, he's had injuries almost every single year. I don't think he's...
He's almost Gumbleton plus, really, though, isn't he?
He is. One thing we've tended to have problems with over the last years, that being the Western Bulldogs, is depth players, and I think Williams will become one of those depth players that you'll see slotted into different positions. I think they're going to persist with Tom Young at centre half back and Roughhead at full back, and develop a core group of players around that half back line, looking at Johannesson. And another player which we haven't seen much of this year, who we saw a few games last year, was Lin Jong, who I think is going to develop in time.
Yeah, but fortunately he broke his leg in the second round against Coburg for Williams. Yeah. So, and again, another injury that's had a bit of a setback.
Guys, looking at the big picture stuff, there's a little bit of a propensity, I guess, to when a team's sort of down the bottom of the ladder, thought of as one of the poorer teams, financially struggling, like Melbourne is. People tend to look at them and wonder what their sort of mid to long term future is. But the difference I see with the Bulldogs is they have a lot of quality leaders and experience at the club, whereas Melbourne has had a real dearth of that. And you probably don't have the same development issues that Melbourne is showing. And I just sort of feel that it might be more sort of the retirement of some, the old stages back when Johnson and Smith and the like retired, and Cooney was injured for a fair while, and you were denied a little bit of access to the draft because of the expansion team. So it was the wrong time to sort of be falling out of the finals and having to rebuild. But you don't see any. You're fairly positive about the future. You don't see any long-term issues.
Well, there is quite a lot of list issues in our team. I mean, Eid was pushing for a flag, so we traded away a lot of second-rounder, third-rounders for seasoned bodies to try and go for that flag. Unfortunately, we weren't quite good enough. I mean, we probably got Hall a year too late. Acker was good for us, but you look at it, we traded away a lot of second and third-round picks during that time. The first-round picks we've picked, like a Jared Grant, hasn't quite come on. So we've got some good youngsters, we've got some good older players. That middle-aged type player we're really lacking in. I think Higgins is basically one of the few, and he's perpetually injured as well. So this is where our pain is coming in, because once the likes of Legier is probably going to be retiring at the end of the year, Boyd has more time, and Cross is starting to really struggle. Once those guys drop off, this is where we're going to really see the pain, because we don't have that middle-aged players to come up. We've got, again, good core of young players, some good senior players. So I think there's no illusions here. It's going to maybe even get a little bit worse before it gets better, but we're heading in the right direction. Where I like it is they are having a crack. You watch Melbourne, and sometimes they drop their heads. You think, gee, I'd hate to be a Melbourne supporter. This is from me, a Bulldog supporter.
I think that's right. Another key issue too is the change of captaincy over the last few years. Look, Johnson, whether or not you loved him or hate him, he was a great leader, and he was an inspiring leader for the boys when it came to the grunch, and he was the one that rallied the troops together when they needed to stand, and quite often he did it more than he didn't. I think a key figure like that is what's being missed on the field. And no disrespect to Matthew Boyd, I think he's a great clubman, but whether or not his ability to bring that team together when it's needed and really be the voice of the team and lift everyone, that's not something everyone has the ability to do. It takes a special player to be able to do that. And I think so. The younger guys need a lot of leadership too. The younger ones need a figure that they can see taking on that lead and being the role model. And I think because we've had such a broad range or a large number of group in the captaincy group there or the leadership group, not one of them has really had to step up over that time and take on that particular role. So maybe it might be time for a Griffin it's probably a little bit late for Bob, but someone from that group needs to really step up a notch or two and show these kids the way.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, we're going to have to leave that part, leave the first segment there. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up for the night. But before I do that, what are you looking forward to on the weekend? ODM?
Probably looking at it now, probably the Collingwood-Sydney game. Collingwood generally have a pretty good record over Sydney, and it was a big win for them against Geelong, but their injury toll is mounting, and I'm just interested to see whether they can just keep finding players to sort of play above themselves and and take out these big games. So that'll be an interesting one on for a blockbuster club on a Friday night. Sorry, guys.
What about you, Messenger?
There is a very critical game being played on Sunday. North Melbourne host Adelaide.
Oh,
and
thought you were going somewhere else there for a minute.
North Melbourne lose this one. They're 3-6.
Yeah,
and they are the first team since Fitzroy 1978 to have lost 3 of their first 8 games by less than a goal. But if they lose this one, they are in massive strife. And it's a pretty game for Adelaide too. They're 4-4, and injury depleted as they are, they really need this. But for North Melbourne, this win's compulsory, and we might have to invite a North Melbourne supporter on next week if they go down.
What about Hawthorn, Matt? I mean, you're playing the Gold Coast this week, mate. How much are you going to win by, and are you treating it as a bit of a holiday?
Listen, cockhead.
I
tell you what I hope for that game. I hope that Alistair Clarkson picks one of our young midfielders out, like Jed Anderson or maybe even Shane Savage if he gets back up. And he says, you go stand next to number 9 and you go with him all day. Get a lesson from a champion. And apart from that, I'm pretty happy. The Hawthorn playing pretty well, but I think whenever you get a young midfielder, the opportunity to play against a guy like Gary Ablett, I think you've got to take it in a game like that.
Yeah. And how's your weekend shaping up, mate?
So we playing St Kilda. I'm still a little apprehensive. I mean, we could go down hard. The other game I'm looking forward to is Richmond and Essendon. Traditional rivals. See Richmond supporters go all feral on base 18. It's always fun.
Yep. And what about you, Mike?
Yes, look, I will say St Kilda Western Bulldogs. St Kilda, look, they're not travelling too well. They're 2-6, and we're certainly travelling worse off, 1-7. I think it's going to be a very important game from the Bulldogs from a perspective that it's going to show some resolve about where the club is and whether or not it has the ability to come back. I expect a tough game there, and I couldn't bravely tell you one way or the other if the Bulldogs are going to win or lose. It's really just one of those things where we hope that we can see McCartney pull something positive out of this group and bring it to the level we know it's capable of playing.
So you think we're a chance there, Mike?
I think on paper, yes. I think, look, St Kilda still has a number of good players. Let's not kid ourselves here, but I think they've really got to step up and do something. I think it's time to stop cutting bait and fish and really stand up for the club and stand up for the players they are. And there's a number of senior players in the list there that really need to bring their best and start playing for the colours they wear.
Yeah, Mike, St Kilda are not good at professional football, mate. Any team that loses to them, seriously.
I think you guys are definitely.
There were mitigating circumstances, weren't there, Walker?
Yeah, there was a lamppost in the middle of Etihad, wasn't there?
Oh, Mr. One pair of boots a year. Look,
Well played.
I think the Saints would be. I think you guys would be a good chance against the Saints. You play your best footy. You go out there and you go hard. I think you're as good a chance as anybody on the day there. It's a well even match.
Well, do you think St Kilda are a crisis team next week if they go down?
Who have they got?
Well, St Kilda
Well, it's whoever loses to the Gold Coast, so it'll be Hawthorn in crisis next week.
Might be us if we lose to GWS.
If Hawthorn lose to Gold Coast, it will be a crisis. You may be calling me from the loony farm, I think.
Geelong have got Gold Coast next week, so this week not so much.
Yes.
So best of luck anyway, guys.
No worries.
For me, of course, I'm looking forward to the Brisbane Carlton game. Couldn't give a crap about the rest of you.
Go Brisbane, yeah.
Really don't care. I'm looking forward to Lunenberger showing Warnock how to play the game. No, not really.
Actually, that could be difficult.
That'd be fun.
Leuenberger against Warnock. Wow, that's he could get 70 hitouts. Is chiseled jawed model botherer Sean Hampson playing next week?
No, he'll be getting like 1 billion hitouts in the reserves next week.
It's a buy.
I know, it's a buy. So he won't be getting anything.
Well, he'll be getting something, but it just won't be football related.
Well, can you honestly say he's losing in that situation then? No. No, you can't.
We salute you, Sean Hampson. We salute you.
He's a winner on and off the field, that boy.
He's a rock star.
No, just off the field.
Any closing thoughts before we go?
Yeah, Matt Thompson, you're a cocker.
I think that bit might make the edit. All right, guys. Thank you very much for coming in. I will say goodnight to you all. Thanks for coming in, Ant and Mike.
No worries.
Your thoughts?
No worries. Thanks for the opportunity, guys. Appreciate it.
Your thoughts on the Bulldogs scene and what turned out to be a very long Bulldogs cast at the first 20 minutes was very good. And
Bulldogs Mafia.
Messenger, as always, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
And ODN, it's been a very fun 2 hours.
My pleasure, mate.
All right, thanks very much, guys, and we'll see you all on the forums. Good luck with the games this week.
All right. Good night, lads.
Cheers, guys.